Hello, everyone, and thank you for deciding to download this particular episode. I spoke to Neale Donald Walsh a few days ago, and I'm just recording this intro now. So, this guy for me, I might mention this in the interview, I can't remember, is one of the big reasons I got so drawn to this topic of spirituality. His book, particularly the very first one he brought out, Conversations with God, Book One, was really something that resonated with me on a very profound level. It was almost like when I listened to it on Audible, it was almost like it was talking to me. And, it was hard to explain, but it was a good book. And basically, the book is about him, Neale, having a conversation with God about, you name it, all sorts of questions. And if you haven't heard it, check it out. It's free on YouTube to listen to. You don't have to read it. You can just sit back and listen to it, and hopefully you can get the same thing that I did out of it. But anyway, here is the interview. I hope you enjoy it. It is great to bring you this man, and hopefully you can learn a little bit. So thank you for listening, and I will catch you soon. Goodbye.
You sh-
All right, I've lost your image, but that's okay because
you said I can leave whenever I want to, so I thought I would take you up on it.
I see.
Just play. I'm just playing.
I know you are, mate. I know. That's part of the reason I think I got drawn to you is your sense of humor. You deliver this spiritual message in a funny way. So, yeah, it's what I like about you, Neale. Anyway,
Cool.
so my guest today had a conversation with God and was brave enough to share it with the world. The books offer wisdom, knowledge, and answers to some of life's biggest questions in a modern, entertaining way. These books have gone on to sell millions of copies all around the world and have been translated into multiple languages. From a personal point of view, the messages Neale received guided me through a period of darkness in my life. The words touched me in a profound way. Hopefully the conversation we have today can trigger your own search into Neale's work and give you the answers you are looking for too. Neale Donald Walsch, thank you for joining me.
You're very welcome, and it's very lovely to be here. And thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to share what I've been given to share with more people. So thank you for this chance to do that.
That's exactly what it was, wasn't it? It's you often say this, it's not your actual work, it's the messages you received and you're just the messenger.
Oh my gosh, that's the biggest thing I want people to know. These are not my messages. I really have nothing to do with it in that sense. I simply took dictation. So these messages came to me and through me from the God of my understanding. And I have nothing to do with the messages themselves, except that I transcribed them. I kept a record of them. Initially, I didn't really imagine that anyone else in the whole world would ever see these messages that I was receiving. This, as far as I felt it at the beginning, at the outset, this was just a personal, very private, I almost want to say sacred spiritual experience.
Yeah.
I was really journaling, just journaling in my notebook and then writing down angry questions that I had about life. What does it take to make life work? And what is it that I don't understand? And I was receiving or hearing, I want to say, answers in my mind. So I just made note of them because they sounded interesting enough for me to keep a record of. So I wound up writing down what I was hearing in my head. But then I was told in the middle of this, what started to look like a dialogue, it was really an on-paper dialogue between me and what I chose to feel was the God of my understanding. And then I was told, you will make of this one day a book. and it will be accessed by many people. And you know what I thought? I thought, we'll see about that. That's not going to happen. And I thought, now I've gotcha. Because you know what? This is proof. I mean, there's not a chance in the world that any publisher is going to say, we're going to put this out. We're going to publish, we're going to publish every word you've written that you imagine that you've talking to God. And I knew there wasn't a chance in the world that was going to happen. So I thought, well, we'll see about that. And that's what made me actually send my notes to a publisher.
Wow.
And I did, yeah, and I thought, well, we'll see. I mean, and I realized there was one chance in a million that a publisher would actually, I mean, can you imagine this? I could imagine the publisher running out to the workroom floor where all his editors were sitting at their desks saying to them, hey, stop the presses. I got a guy here who's talking to God. It's not going to happen. No way in the world.
Exactly.
So I realized that this was how I could call myself out and realized that I'm just making it up. I'm just imagining it. So I did send it to a publisher. By golly, they actually called me about a week or 7, 10, maybe 10 days later. My phone rang because I put my phone number on the message that I sent them. And they called me and they said, we want to publish this book. I said, no way. It's not even a book. It's just a rambling series of questions and answers. They said, well, we're going to publish it just like that without any editing. And they didn't edit a single word.
Wow.
And I could imagine, can you imagine the publisher, again, going out to his editors saying, which one of you guys want to edit God? It's not going to happen. So they didn't touch it. No, not a single word or phrase was changed by the publisher. They published it exactly as it came off my pen on the yellow legal pad.
Yeah.
And by golly, the book came out. And we both thought, the publisher and I both thought, well, it might sell 2 or 3, maybe 4,000 copies. It's kind of an interesting title.
Yeah.
But it did not sell 2 or 3, 4,000 copies.
No.
It sold 15 million.
Yeah. Well, obviously, when that publisher read it, he got the same connection that everyone else did, and he saw the potential in it. So yeah, but from a personal point of view, from your
the story was, here's how it really went, because I don't think that the publisher did see the potential in it. I think he thought it was kind of interesting book. It was not a major publisher. I didn't send it to Simon and Schuster or one of the major world publishers. I sent it to a small independent publisher on the East Coast of the United States. So they might have put out, 7, maybe in a good year, 10 books a year. But so I just sent it to this small publisher, and he read it, ho hum. He thought, well, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. But here's the story, interesting anecdote. His son, who worked for him in the publishing company, came into his office one day and saw the manuscript on his desk. He saw the cover.
Oh.
The cover page. It was just a document, but the cover page said "Conversations with God." So he said to his father, "What's that?" And his father said, "Well, this guy thinks he's talking to God, and he sent me a transcript of his dialogue." And his son, who was like maybe 27 or 26 at the time, said, "I'd love to read it. I'd love to see what it's like." And his father said, "Here, take it, read it. Let me know what you think." So he brought it back a few days later. This is the anecdote the father told me, after all was said and done, but the father shared the anecdote. His son comes back 3 or 4 days later and says, "Dad, this book's going to sell 1 million copies."
Oh, so he's the one. Yeah.
And the father said, "Yeah, right. Son, the day this book sells 1 million copies is the day you become vice president of this company."
Yeah.
And within 7 weeks, his son had to be made vice president of the company because they put the book out, and it made the New York Times bestseller list.
Wow.
I'm not bragging. I'm just saying this is just what happened.
I know.
The book made the New York Times bestseller list in 3 or 4 weeks, and it wouldn't stop selling. It just kept on flying off the shelves wherever it was made available.
Yeah.
And people were telling other people who were telling other people, you got to read this book, you got to read this book. The word of mouth got out. And pretty soon, one of the major publishers, I think it was Putnam or Simon & Schuster, called this small publishing house because they were looking at the sales. They're always looking at sales of books. And they said, hey, what have you got there? We'd like to buy this book from you and give it worldwide distribution.
Wow.
So the small publisher on the East Coast sold the book to the major publisher in New York for money, more money than you could even imagine. Yeah. And the New York publisher, they bought it and they put it out, and they put it out worldwide. And it was in bookstores around the world, within a matter of 6 or 7 weeks. And then it went from there. So, all of which is me saying the long way around, when God tells you something, you probably should believe it. Because she said, you will make of this one day a book, and it will be accessed by many people. And he was right. This is exactly what happened.
Mm. So with these books, how did the message actually come through? Was it, I think you touched on it in the beginning. You said it was, you were just writing it and you didn't really understand.
Well, I wasn't even, to be honest, I wasn't even writing it as a book.
No, yeah.
No, I was simply having a dialogue in my notebook. I was journaling. And I was just writing random questions. What does it take to make life work? What have I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle? Yeah. And I remember writing in the notebook, somebody tell me the rules. I'll play the game. Just tell me the rules. Because I clearly don't understand. There's something here I don't understand about what makes life work and why is it the way it is, and all those questions we all have. So, but how my experience was, I began hearing a voice in my mind. I mean, I just heard, I call it a voiceless voice, kind of like the sound of your own thoughts. You wouldn't characterize your thoughts as a voice that sounded a certain way, but it clearly is a voiceless voice that speaks to you. And so but they weren't the sound of my own thoughts, because I realized that I was hearing things I had never even imagined could possibly be true. And when I'm saying this to an audience, I'm often asked, like what? Give me an example. Well, like this. God said to me, there's no such thing as the 10 Commandments. I said, what? That's not possible. Of course there. No, God said, no, there's no such thing. Who would I command? You're all part of me. Would I command myself? Who would I command? I never commanded anyone. There were no such thing as the 10 Commandments, but there are 10 commitments. This I can tell you. I can make a commitment to you. You will know that you're on the path to God, because when you're on the path to God, you shall not steal. You shall not lie. You won't covet your neighbor's wife. You won't do stuff like that because you're on a different pathway, and you would never do those things. So I can tell you, this is how you will know. These are the signs. I give you these signs. So these are my commitments to you, my 10 commitments. You will know that you're on the path to God, because when you're on the path to God, you will not do these things.
Yeah.
And he told that to Moses on the mountaintop. And then Moses went down and told the people, when you're on the right pathway to God, you won't do these things. And they heard it as commandments.
Yeah.
You shall not do these things. And ever since then, we've imagined that not only does God give us commandments, but he punishes us if we don't do what God has commanded us to do.
Yeah, so this podcast has a strong near-death experience side to it. So I wanted to ask you what you think happens, because you have written a book about this, about I think it's Home with God. What happens when you actually pass over?
Well, I did produce a book like this. Again, I didn't feel like that I wrote it. but I did
Yeah.
take dictation.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. I asked God questions. I asked God
Yeah.
the same kinds of questions you're asking me right now.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, my books are no different from this interview. I simply asked, what happens when we die? What is death anyway? What I started off, what is death?
Yeah.
And God said, Neale, it's really very simple. Death is simply a process of re-identification. I said, oh, interesting. You want to explain that to me?
Yeah.
And God said, well, yeah. First, and by the way, I should tell you that the God of my understanding talks to me very colloquially. That is, she speaks to me like a good friend would talk to me. He doesn't talk to me like some kind of a guru or some kind of a spiritual master. He just sounds like the guy across the street, the guy next door.
Yeah.
So the conversation we have is very colloquial, very informal. But what she said was, Neale, it's really very simple. First thing that happens when you do what you call die, which of course you don't do, you never die, as in ceasing to exist. You never cease to exist. You simply change your identification. You re-identify. And the first part of that process is you realize, oh, I'm not my body. Because there's my body. I can see my body down there on the couch, where I just had my heart attack, or in a hospital bed or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm not that. I'm looking down at myself.
Yeah.
So if I'm not that, what am I? So the first part of the process after we do the thing we call die is we immediately become aware that, oh, I'm not that. I'm not that lump of clay that I thought I was. Yeah. Then we go to a second level of awareness. Oh, you know what? I'm not even my mind. I'm not even my thoughts. I'm the thinker of my thoughts. I'm that which thinks my thoughts, but I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my brain. So I realize in the first moments after death, I will realize I'm not my body and I'm not my mind. Then the third stage of death, when I experience, I'm not even my soul, in the sense of being something separate from or other than the only thing there is. I am one with the only thing there is. And so immediately following what we call our death, we meld or merge with the only thing there is in real terms. We don't merge with it philosophically or psychologically. We merge with it in real terms. That is, we become one with the one thing there is. And we lose our sense of individuated identity. And we realize, oh my gosh, I'm not just looking at, to use a metaphor, the light. I am the light. I am that which I have been praying to all these years, or thinking about, or even in some cases rejecting and imagining didn't exist. I am that which I imagined didn't exist. I am part of that which is the only thing there is. Yeah. And then we reach the fourth stage of death, in my understanding. This is all explained, as you pointed out in the book, Home with God, the subtitle of which is In a Life That Never Ends. Yeah. Home with God in a life that never ends. The fourth step in that process is that which is, I want to say, moves us back into our individual expression. That is, if we re-emerge, it's an emergence. You might even call it emergency. It's a spiritual emergency. And we re-emerge from the whole in order to experience ourselves as a singularization of the singularity. And we suddenly know ourselves again as who we were before we entered into the wholeness. And we say to ourselves, oh my gosh, here I am again as that individuated entity. And then we exist once more as the individual soul that we always have been and always will be. And then we exist in what I call the realm of the spiritual, unless or until we choose to reincarnate, to come back into the realm of the physical. And we can do that in two ways. We can either come back as the same entity we were when we left. That is, we can undie. We actually have the ability to come back to life. Now, on the planet, in earthly terms, we call that a person had a near-death experience.
Yeah.
But there are more than one doctor in the world who will tell you about patients who they thought had died on the operating table, only to find out, hey, the heart is beating again, the heart is beating again. And the person literally came back to life. So we can come back and incarnate as the person we were before we left. Or if we choose, we can come back in an entirely different physical identity. We can reincarnate as someone else, even a different gender, a different sex. We can come back as another person somewhere else and be, I hate to use the term because it's so often misunderstood, but we can literally be born again.
Yeah.
And we can become a born again person, sometimes in a whole different place of the world and in a whole different body. And we can choose, by the way, I'm told reliably, that we can choose to reincarnate on this planet or anywhere else in the cosmos where there is intelligent physical life. And that would be, by the way, millions and millions of places where intelligent life exists.
I know. In one of your books, because I've listened to all of them, that you did get some information about what you call highly evolved beings and how they live compared to us humans, and I think the book goes into, or maybe I've heard an interview where you say that humans are a very young and species compared to some of the other life forms out there, and this is why we have part of the reason why we're still sort of struggling with our own existence here today, because we're still trying to work out what this universe is and where we fit into it. Whereas these highly evolved beings, they've gone way past that, and they're able to use the universe more to their advantage, and obviously understand a lot better who they are and where they came from. So what did he or she tell you about these highly evolved beings in your conversations?
Well, that they are just as you've described them.
Yeah.
They are advanced. They've been around many more years, perhaps millions more years than we have on this planet. This is a very young planet, and we are a very young species, as you've just noticed.
Mm.
And I was told that as well. So we are in the early stages of our spiritual maturation, if I could put it that way. We're just really evolving to the next level in our experience of who we really are. So, and there are emerging species all the time, all over the cosmos. There are even some species, whether you can believe it or not, more primitive than we are, that are even further back in the developmental stage. And new species are being created all the time. But there are species, of course, that have been around for millions of years, and we would consider them gods. If we walked into one of them, we would actually think that they were, in fact, gods. And in the ancient days, in the earliest days of humanity's experience, we did call them gods. We called them gods. We thought of them as gods. And sometimes when they visited us, and they're visiting us, by the way, constantly, highly evolved beings are visiting the earth all the time, watching our process, giving us a little bit of guidance, seeking to help us without interfering with the process itself. Star Trek calls it the prime directive. But I think there's some truth to that. There is kind of what we would call the prime directive, that highly evolved beings are allowed to give us advice, insight, assistance, but they cannot do anything that would materially change the forward trajectory of our experience. In other words, they can't come in here and say, look, it's really this simple. Here's how you make an atom bomb, or here's how you make the weather change, or here's how you deal with. So they don't give us those kinds of insights. They allow us to learn and to experience those advances on our own. But when, in the few instances, when one of those entities from another place, highly evolved beings, have appeared on the earth and actually run into earth people, those earth people saw them as gods, of course, because they could materialize and dematerialize right in front of your eyes. Again, talk about Star Trek, but they could really just become material or become invisible at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
And they could move around and be in any time or place they wanted to be in. So we did call them gods, and we thought of them as divine entities, or if it pleases you, sometimes we call them angels.
Okay. Yeah.
So but the answer to the question, what are they like? They are completely aware of who they are, of why they are in the physical form, and of how they can move forward in demonstrating and completing the agenda of the soul, which, by the way, is the same for all beings everywhere. The agenda of the soul is the same for us as it is for any highly evolved being on some other planet in the cosmos. Every living sentient being has the same agenda. I'd like to tell you, but at these prices, I can't tell you. You have to pay me a great deal more money.
So, yeah, well, could you share because basically what you're saying here is, what is the purpose of life, aren't you? Similar sort of, just a different way of rewording it.
Oh, so you want me to tell you without getting more money, just for free?
I'll send you a check.
Okay, because, well, that won't do me much good, because they tell me your checks are not any good. They bounce all the time. But I'll do it knowing that your check is going to bounce.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything for a lesser involved being. So
well, money is not that important, is it?
No, it really isn't. My wife tells me, Neale, you got to stop joking. People think you're serious sometimes. They really take you seriously. So I'm sure you understand. I'm just having fun. I'm just playing with you.
Of course,
but
yeah.
To answer your question, I forgot what the question was.
What is the purpose of life? What's the soul's agenda?
It's such a big question. I totally forgot it.
Yeah, how could you forget that one?
Yeah, the purpose of life in the physical, as opposed to life in the metaphysical. The purpose of life in the realm of physicality is for us to use the contextual field, which is that realm, where all things exist in physical form, left and right, up and down, here and there, before and after, fast and slow, big and small, male and female, created he, them. So the contextual field includes all physical manifestations. And the purpose of life is for us to use our time in the physical realm in order to realize, that is, to make real, to realize, to demonstrate, to express, to experience who we really are. So we see then that the agenda of every living soul in the cosmos is to demonstrate divinity through the expression of it, so that they might know experientially what they understand in the realm of the spiritual to be who they are. It's one thing for me I use a simple example, if I can, Nick, to explain that more fully. It's one thing for me to know, let's just use a simple example, that I'm generous. Let's just say that I have a thought. Neale, you're a pretty generous person. You're generous with your time, you're generous with your money, you're generous with your, patience, you're generous kind of a person. So, okay, I know myself as that. But it's not enough for the soul to simply know what it is. The soul wishes, I want to say the soul yearns to experience what it knows itself to be. Yeah. Now, in the realm of the spiritual, there's no way to experience that, because there is nothing except all that is right here, right now. So, the soul, excuse me. So, the soul will move into the realm of the physical, where there is that which we are not. See, because what does big mean? Big means nothing unless you've experienced small. What does fast mean? Fast means nothing unless you've experienced slow.
Yeah.
What does good mean? Good means nothing unless you've experienced evil. I hate to put it to you so simply, but it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So if I'm saying, just to use a metaphor, I am the light, God says, okay, you're the light. So what? No, but I don't want to just know that I'm the light. I want to experience myself as being the light. God says, no, we have a problem here. If you want to experience yourself as being the light, you're going to want to move into a place where there's something other than the light, because you can't be the light if you're like a candle in the sun. I mean, you're there all right with the 50 billion cajillion other candles, but you can't experience yourself as the light because all there is the light. So bright you can't even look at it. Therefore, you would have to take yourself out of the sun and place yourself into a space where there was nothing around you but, are you ready? Darkness.
Yeah.
Then you could experience yourself as the light. But if you're not clear what's going on, if you're unsure of what's going on, much less why it's going on, you will actually make the darkness wrong. You will actually raise your fist and curse the darkness. But I'm here to tell you, raise not your fist to heaven and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are, and that all those whose lives you touch might know who they really are as well. Or as other teachers have said, each in their own way, judge not and neither condemn.
So when you experience darkness or fear in your own life, how do you deal with it? Is that how you think about it, and therefore when you do that, it doesn't really hurt you as much, or
it doesn't have anywhere near the emotional impact on me as it used to. In my 20s and my 30s and my 40s and my early 50s, I had no idea what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
It felt like science fiction. And to some people listening right now today, listening in this very moment, might consider it, oh, that's just a lot of ballyhoo. It's just a lot of nonsense. It's not even good science fiction. It's ridiculous. So that's how I felt, whenever I would hear things like this in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. But in the middle of my 50s, I had this extraordinary experience that I've come to call conversations with God. And then I realized, it was all explained to me in terms I could easily understand. Now I understood why the darkness. Why is there a thing called evil, which is, by the way, the word live spelled backwards?
Yeah.
We're just doing things backward. So then I realized, wait a minute. There was a guy walking around here about, I don't know, something like 2,000 years ago, saying things that might have seemed ridiculous. He was saying things like, when you encounter the darkness, actually bless it. Be grateful for it. Be good to it. Or to use his exact words, love your enemies. And pray for those who persecute you. And do good to those who would do you evil. And when a man slaps you on the right cheek, turn and offer your left. And when a man steals your coat, give him your shirt as well. And when a man demands that you walk 1 mile with him, go with him twain. That you might know who you really are. And that all those whose lives you touch might know who they really are as well. Because that's why you came to the realm of the physical. So judge not and neither condemn, but be a light unto the world. Now, people who walk through the world that way, and I wouldn't try to pretend that I'm one of them, because I'm not, but I'm getting there. I do it more often than I used to, for sure. I'm much better in my mind and in my heart and in my soul around those kinds of responses to life than I was in my 20s or my 30s or my 40s or even my 50s. But in my 60s and my 70s, to answer the question you asked about an hour ago, you're going to find out that you asked me a 30-second question and I give you a 30-minute answer.
That's
But
fine, Neil. That's fine.
but to answer the question you asked me way back then, how do I deal with it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I look at it, I look whatever's coming down the pike, I look at whatever's coming at me from all corners, and I think to myself, another opportunity. Not opposition, but opportunity. It's the law of opposites that I was given in conversations with God. God said to me, you know, there are a lot of laws in the universe, the law of gravity, you know, there are many other laws in the universe, but you haven't heard yet about the law of opposites. I said, you're right. What is that? She said, Neale, the moment you decide that you are anything, that you want anything or choose to embrace anything in yourself, everything unlike it will become known to you in your life. It must, because in the absence of what you are not, what you are is not. That is, it's not experienceable. In the absence of short, you are not tall. In the absence of slow, you are not fast. In the absence of black, you are not white. In the absence of white, you are not black. In the absence of what you're not, what you are is not. So you have brought yourself to the contextual field that you call the realm of the physical. So you could deliberately encounter that which you are not in order to experience that which you are. So you want to experience yourself as generous? Walk down the street of any city and encounter that which you are not. Encounter the person who doesn't have any money at all, sitting on a sidewalk, leaning up a building, leaning against the bricks, with a small basket at his feet and a cardboard sign that says, anything helps.
Yeah.
And reach into your pocket and take out a $20 bill, not a quarter or a $50. Take out a $20 bill and put it in that basket that you might know who you really are in the space of the experience of that which you are not. And then bless that which you are not. As you put that $20 bill in the man's basket, say to the man, bless you, my brother, bless you.
Yeah, I that reminds me of a story. I heard you on an interview one day say, you know, because when just before you had this conversation with God, you were in a pretty rough spot, weren't you? You were homeless or on the brink of homelessness.
I wasn't on the brink of homelessness, Nick. I was living on the sidewalk.
Yeah, yeah, and
That's not called being on the brink of homelessness. That's being homeless.
Yeah, yeah.
I was living on the street. I was what's known in America as a street person because life's events had contrived to put me in a place where I had no job, no money, no house to go to. Here's what happened in 3 quick sentences. My relationship fell apart and my wife asked me to leave. We weren't really angry with each other, but we were clear it wasn't working. So in a cordial way, we said, okay, we'll go our separate ways. But I had nowhere to live. So I got a little apartment someplace. But then, believe this or not, 5 days later, I lost my job. Not because I wasn't performing well, but because the company was losing money and they had to cut staff. So I was downsized. And my boss even said, boy, we hate to lose you. You were one of the best guys we ever hired. But, you know, last in, first out, you have no seniority, so we have to let you go. I said, wow. So now within 5-day period, I lose my relationship and I lose my job, which means I have no way to pay for the apartment I just rented. I mean, I had a few dollars saved, but I realized I got about 2 months worth, maybe 3 at the most. At the end of 3 months, I mean, how many people save more than 3 months worth of expense money? So unless you're really fabulously wealthy, you don't have that kind of money. So I realized I'm in trouble here. And sure enough, in 3 months, I had nowhere to live. I couldn't pay the rent. And my landlord said, I'm sorry, tough break, but I have to ask you to leave. But now, wait a minute, the story isn't over yet, Nick.
No, it's interesting.
Because a few days after losing my job, I'm driving around trying to find a different job. I'm going to a job interview. And some elderly gentleman turns his car in front of me, he's making a left turn, and he misjudged the distance between his car and mine. He smashed right into me. I mean, it was a nightmare. It was a major, not a minor little fender bender, a major car accident. My car was totaled. When they pulled me out of the wreck, they realized I had suffered a broken neck. When I got to the hospital, they diagnosed it as a 3/4 inch avulsion fracture of the 7th cervical vertebrae posteriorly. I still remember the words, the exact wording of the report that came back from the examination. You know how big a 3/4 inch break in your neck is? We're not talking about a hairline fracture here. We're talking about a break in your neck big enough to put a pencil through.
Yeah.
A 3/4 inch avulsion fracture
Yeah.
of the 7th cervical vertebrae posteriorly. In other words, a really bad broken neck. And so they're telling me, not only have you just lost your job, just lost your relationship, but now you've lost your health. You can't even move around the way you used to. They put me in what's called a Philadelphia collar. It's a therapeutic device that holds your head up when your neck can't hold your head up. So they put you in the collar. They tell you, Neale, you're not to take this collar off for any reason. Not to take a shower, not to go to sleep, not to make love, not for any, do not take this collar off.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing holding your head in place right now. And it's going to take many months for that fracture to heal and for that bone to fuse and give you some way of holding your head up again. So now I can't get a job anywhere because I'm going for the job interview. I'm wearing this therapeutic collar. And everybody who's interviewing me finally were saying, no, thanks. Thanks for the application. But one guy was at least honest with me. He said to me, Mr. Walsch, you've got all the qualifications, really. We'd hire you in a minute. You've got a good background. I can't hire a guy who's walking around with a therapeutic device on his neck. One wrong move, and we're paying your health insurance bills for the next 16 years.
Yeah.
When you're healthy again, come on in and we'll hire you.
Yeah.
So I realized, my gosh, I'm out of work. I can't get a job anywhere. I can't move around. I lost my wife. I lost my house. And finally, I got a little part-time job as a radio announcer. I had done some radio work earlier in my life, and it doesn't take a lot of energy. I promised the boss, all I have to do is just sit there really quietly, just gently. I won't even move. I'll just say, 20 after 4 o'clock, 45 degrees outside. I'll just be a radio announcer.
Yeah.
The guy said, okay, good enough. Obviously, you have the talent. Well, and they gave me a weekend. They didn't have a full-time job available, but I got a weekend job as a fill-in. So the full-time guys could have the weekend off. So I'm working on Saturday and Sunday, not making very much money, but just barely enough to be able to afford a little place on top of a garage someplace, a little one-room flat, one room with my bedroom, living room all in one room. And that's when I sat down and took out my yellow legal pad. And Nick, I was crying, literally crying tears, because I'm not a young man. I wasn't like 22 or 35. I was 55 years old.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm saying to God, okay, I got it. What the heck does it take to make life work? And what have I done? I know I haven't been an angel on the planet, fair enough, but what have I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle, one thing after the other, after the other, after the other? What's this all about?
Mm.
And that's when God said to me, Neale, relax. You're going to be okay. There's more going on here than meets the eye.
Yeah.
Or as my friend Bill said, I love Bill, he's a wonderful guy. He said, Well, he didn't say, but he actually wrote it. There are more things in heaven and earth ratio than are dreamt of in your philosophy. To be or not to be, that is the question.
Oh, that Bill, yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Like a few years ago, I wouldn't have believed in God and or anything more than this spiritual realm, which we see on a daily basis. It was yeah, I had a bit of my own spiritual awakening, and now, you know, I realize the truth to that statement, that there is a lot more going on here than what we as humans see with our human eyes and hear with our human ears. It's a more divine universe, and you know, it's a spiritual place, and
there's a purpose. See, there's a function. That's the point I want to make here in this interview. Not only is that there's more going on, but it's not something that we can completely misunderstand. It's not something that we can't grasp. You know, I don't get this thing. Since I was a kid, I used to hear, "Mysterious are the ways of the Lord."
Yeah.
God said there's nothing mysterious about it. It's really very simple. As a soul, you want to experience who you know yourself to be. So you've come to the realm of the physical, where there is that which you are not. Because in heaven, there's nothing that you are not. It's all love, joy, peace, wisdom, clarity, understanding, right here, right now. Love is all there is. And there's only now. There's not even time. It's just always now. Love here and now. So you go to the realm of the physical, where there is more than here and now, more than love, and you know, and there's a contextual field.
Yeah.
And you've gone there to experience who you really are in relationship to that which you are not. So when that which you are not shows up in your life, do not condemn it.
Bless you. Do you think there's some elements of planning we possibly do before we come to this?
No, not in terms of the actual events. We don't sit down and say, "Oh yeah, on August 24th, 2026, I'm going to come down with a very bad cold, and I'm going to go outside and I'm going to trip on the third step and fall down and break my ankle." And that, no, we don't have a plan.
I just say that because of what happened to you. It just seemed, you know, the accident and you know, all those things coming together at once.
There is no plan, but there are events that sequence themselves, and there is an agenda. An agenda is not quite the same as a plan, in my understanding. A plan is how you carry out the agenda, but the agenda is to experience yourself as who you really are.
Yeah.
And all souls are working together, my understanding, in order to move forward the agenda of each of the souls that are interacting. For instance, just to use a simple example, right now, you and I are doing this program.
Yeah.
Who created this? You or me? See, who's creating the questions? Who's creating the answers? Who's creating the experience? Oh, wait a minute. It's neither you nor me. It's everyone who's listening. They're the ones who created it. They're sitting there listening right now going, "Boy, am I glad I brought myself to this program. I'm really glad I created this program." And we have to say to them, "Hey, you didn't create it by yourself. We co-created it." So what I've learned about life, Nick, is that the events and the circumstances of our physical life are co-created by all the souls that are involved in that particular interaction and in that particular experience. But we didn't all sit up at a round table or in the boardroom, you know, in heaven, say, I'll tell you what, on the 14th of August, you're going to come into the room and you're going to rob me. You're going to pull a gun out of and I'm going to stand up and I'm going to throw my chair at you. And you're say, no. We did not sit down and plan the events of our life. But we did plan what it is. That is, we did choose what it is we wish to experience of ourselves in any particular lifetime. What aspect of divinity are you working on now? That's the question we invite people to ask themselves. I know what mine is. I don't even have to think twice about it. I've come here to experience patience.
So can I ask you why some people?
No, I have no patience with your question. I'm tired of these. I'm tired of these questions. All right.
All right,
I'm trying to have more patience. Try to have more patience. Go on, ask your silly question.
Oh, now I forgot. Can I ask why some people get to experience that connection with God and the universe and
Everybody
others?
experiences it. No. Everybody. It's not some people. There are not chosen ones. I know where you're going with the question. Why are some people given the opportunity to experience that connection and some people are not?
Yeah.
Everybody is not only given the opportunity, everybody is experiencing that connection all the time. They're either paying attention to it, or they're not, or they're paying attention to it but calling it something else. I'm not talking to God. God doesn't talk to me. Every so often I might get a brilliant idea. Every so often I might have, what you'd call an epiphany. Every so often I might have, a touch and experience of women's intuition or a psychic hit. I had an incredible psychic hit yesterday. So we will call it by whatever name we can use so that people won't ridicule us. But if you walk around saying, no, I had a conversation with God this morning, people are going to look at you askance. They're going to say, oh, really? You think you had a conversation with God? You better start calling it something else, or we're going to put you on the 7th floor psych ward at the local hospital.
It's interesting. It's just I say that because from a personal point of view, I was, like I said a few years ago, I was atheist, and suddenly the light started revealing itself to me in a way I couldn't ignore. And
you can't deny it anymore. Yes.
No. So, and then I look at my parents, who they're about your age, and they are in that situation I was in a few years ago, and they still, they struggle to see where I'm coming from when I try to explain to them that there's more to this reality.
There's no explanation. But let me explain to you. Everybody is having a conversation with God all the time. They're simply calling it something else. In our culture, Nick, we hear about things like OBEs, out-of-body experiences. We hear about things like NDEs, near-death experiences. We hear about all the. This is what's called an NOE, no other explanation. And so you're having NOEs. There's no other explanation.
No.
God's talking to me. I can call it something else. I can call it women's intuition. I can call it an epiphany or a sudden insight or a psychic hit or whatever words I want to use. But the source of wisdom and clarity is informing me, through me, as me, coming from inside of me, which is where, by the way, it resides. This isn't a communication from somewhere outside of ourselves. God is embedded, that which we call God, the energy that is God, is embedded within each of us and arises from within. It doesn't land on us from outside. We simply, and if you don't go within, by the way, you go without. God told me that. Neale, if you don't go within, you go without. That is, you go without the wisdom, the clarity, the understanding, the compassion, the love, the awareness, the understanding that already resides within you. So your job is not to call for it from outside of yourself. Your job is to call it forth from inside of yourself. Therefore, you must have a certain level of what some people might call spiritual arrogance. When you're beset with problems or challenges or questions in your life, call forth the wisdom, the clarity, the understanding, the awareness, and the resources that you need to answer those questions and resolve those problems.
So, Neale, where do you think humanity is going? Like, what I'm going to ask you a sort of crystal ball question here. Like, what do you think the path humanity will take over the next few hundred years? Is it going to be a more spiritually evolved species, or do you think we could destroy ourselves?
If we make it the next few hundred years, I think that where we are headed is to a place where we finally reach critical mass in the number of humans who understand what you and I are talking about in this program.
Yeah.
And who not only understand it, but embrace it as their own lived reality. And so I think that we are just really, in universal, eternal terms, moments away from that time when we reach critical mass. And when I say moments, I mean in relative terms, maybe a few decades, maybe less than 100 years, if we manage to live that long on this planet. And because we're moving in that direction, it all depends on how long it takes us to reach critical mass. You know, they tell us that critical mass is not one more than half of the whole number. It's not 40% or 20%. I'm told by physicists that critical mass is not even 10%. It's something between 4 and 5% of the whole number. When we reach 5% of humanity with the messages we're sharing here, the first domino will fall. And after the first domino falls, the rest of the dominoes will follow. But the question is, can we make the first domino fall before the fall of man? Before we eliminate ourselves with things like paying no attention to what we're doing with our climate. I mean, come on, people. Lakes that are drying up right in front of our face, and we say there's no such thing as global warming. Hello, Earth to humans.
I mean, even in my short 40 years, I've noticed the 40. I'm 47. 47 years. I've noticed the climate change, quite substantially. So it's definitely changing,
and that is not the only problem.
Mm.
You know, what do we do about the problem of people who say, either you will do what I demand, or I'm going to kill you. In fact, I'll kill as many people in your country as I can, because let me explain something to you. Let me explain something to you very clearly. The boundary line between your country is going to be where I say it is, not where you say it is. I know it's your country, but the boundary line is going to be where I say it is. And either you agree with where I say it is, or I will kill thousands and thousands of men, women, and children in order to make my point. Ponyamaya? And we say, Niet Ponyamaya. I don't understand. So we have to do more than deal with climate change.
Yeah.
We have to deal with human change.
Yeah.
We have to stop a process that tells us we can't even get medicine that's badly needed in third world countries because they don't have enough money to afford it.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got to, grow up as a species in a lot of ways. You just look at the suffering all around the world in terms of violence and things like people starving to death. And they're just two examples of how we could so quickly change those things. And yet, we continue to do the same old thing we've done for hundreds of years. So,
Nick, 650 children die of starvation on this planet every week. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I got that statistic wrong. I mean every day. Oh, I'm sorry. I got that statistic wrong. I mean every hour. Nick, 650 children die on this planet of starvation every hour, while we throw away more food, leftovers from the plates in our restaurants in a single week than would be needed to feed the children of the world for a month. What kind of a civilization allows 600 of its children to die every hour of starvation? What kind of a civilization is that? What kind of a civilization allows 2.5 billion people, almost a quarter of humanity, to go their entire lives without one drop of clean water. Not one cup of clean water. Well, we throw away more water in our sinks every day than would be needed to provide clean water for them for a year. I mean, come on. Can our civilization be civilized? Hello, earth to people, earth to people. But when we say it's time to wake up, then people say, oh, he's one of the woke. Oh, woke has become the new 4-letter word. It's even worse than the word that starts with the letter F. It's the letter W. He's one of the woke. Oh, God, we can't listen to him. But if we don't wake up, there will be no place for us to be before long. So, folks, if you're not one of the woke, you'll soon be one of the dead. You choose.
All right. Well, our hour's up now, Neale. Did you want to leave us on a positive frame of mind after that little bit of scary discussion? And what's the word? Disappointing aspect of humanity. Did you want to leave us with a bit of positive wisdom?
I think we're headed in the right direction. I think that people are nodding their heads, yes, all over the world right now, when they hear messages like this. They might not like to hear about the things that aren't working, but we are very, very clear that people see themselves as kind, caring, compassionate entities. We're simply not clear how to put that into practice on a global basis in our lives. But now, with the beauty and the wonder of the internet, who would have thought even a few years ago that what we're doing right here, right now would have been possible?
It's amazing.
With people able to listen to us all over the world, from every country on the planet. So because of where technology has taken us to a place where we can communicate grand and wonderful and glorious truths to huge numbers of people instantly, we're very close to reaching that pinnacle called critical mass. So I see us getting there very, very rapidly. All we have to do is say no to those who say it's not good to be woke.
Yeah,
of course it's good to be awakened.
It is, absolutely. I can speak for that personally. But have you got any more books you're working on?
I'm always working on a book, and I'm working on a book right now, which I won't be discussing because it'll be released here before long.
Oh,
but
good.
Yeah, I'm always working on a book, and this is book number 41.
Wow.
I've had 40 books published. Most of when I write a book, I just don't put it in my computer in a file. It winds up being published and finding its way to a bookstore shelf.
Yeah.
That's what happens when, again, I'm not bragging, just saying. That's what happens when you wind up selling 15 million books in 37 languages. At this point, publishers call you and say, hey, you know what? Send us the Manhattan telephone directory in your own handwriting. We'll publish it.
Yeah.
So any book that I write is going to be published.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm writing book number 41, even as we speak.
Is it going to be another Q&A one, or is it?
No, it's not a Q&A. And the most recent, it's an explanation of how we can apply the information in the Q&A books. And it's a follow-up on the book, which is my most recent book, which was published 24 months ago, called The God Solution.
Yeah.
And the God Solution asks the question, if there really is a God, then why is the world such a mess? And the book provides the answer. We have simply misdefined God. We've totally and completely misunderstood who and what God is. And the book resolves that dilemma.
Okay. Well, I look forward to reading or listening to that one when it comes out. But yeah, thank you so much for your time and for joining me, and for being such an incredible messenger. And all the best for your journey in the future, Neale.
Thank you, Nick, for the opportunity to share these moments with you. I'd appreciate it very much. Let's
Okay.
do it again sometime.
Oh, love to. Sending you love, brother. See ya.
Okay for now. Bye for now.